Today I'm going to be breaking down 5 of the most famous YouTube chefs. And if you do happen to enjoy this video, then don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. First up, we have Andy Cooks. Andy does an excellent job, and personally, I think he is not only an excellent chef, but he has beautiful visuals, smooth edits, and he's pretty precise with his knife skills.
All right, we're back and we're in my work test kitchen, Kilcoy Global Foods, and I want to answer the question that I get asked all the time is how to cook the perfect steak. Now I want to start by making the caveat that there's no perfect way, there's lots of different ways. If you've got a technique that you think works well, then please leave it in the comments below because we'd love to hear about it.
This is the one thing that I love about Andy, is that he's not the type of person that says you have to do it this way, that way, or this way.
Let's go. Are you happy? Dirty plate.
Yeah, that bit.
I'm not happy with that. Hair there on the pheasant, pull it out. Yeah. Come on, wake up. You got 4 eyes. Let's go. Up, go, table 14. Go.
All right, pan searing a steak. So you ideally want a skillet, something like this, cast iron, heavy, well seasoned. And then your steaks, this works really well with ribeye or sirloin or fillet, any kind of cut that's not massive like the tomahawk we're going to do later. There's a lot of argument at the moment about whether you temper steaks or not, bring it up to temperature, room temperature. I can assure you most restaurants around the world cooking steaks of this size do not temper their steaks. They come out of the fridge and they go in the pan or onto the grill. And I do the same thing.
At home, I do the same thing as Andy. Some restaurants do actually take out their steaks before and bring them up to room temp, because when you add a steak cold to a pan, the exterior of the steak will cook faster than the internal temp. And when you have a steak that is this thick, or a little thicker, no, it's going to take a lot hotter to heat the center.
First things first, this pan's hot, get some oil in it. And don't be shy, add a good amount of oil. Season our steaks with salt. I'll talk about why I don't use pepper in a minute. Season it on all sides. All right, we can see that the oil's starting to smoke. Time to get these in.
I have a feeling why he doesn't use pepper is because peppercorns, especially when you crack them, have a tendency to burn. Now, if you leave them whole, that's another thing. But if you finally crack the black pepper, they can burn a lot easier in the pan.
First things first, fat cap down. What that does is render that fat. You see they're getting color already. Let's get the other side. Now, the flat face down. And we're going to keep turning these. We're going to turn them about every 30 seconds or so. And that way we get really nice, even charring.
Heston Blumenthal actually mentioned this technique many years ago of flipping the steak every so many seconds, and that actually gets a more consistent internal temperature.
Here's my secret for the perfect steak. I'm flipping this steak every 15 to 20 seconds. As you can see on the thermal imaging camera, the side away from the heat cools down really quickly. My flipping trick means that the outsides stay hot enough for a crust to form, but the insides won't overcook.
We're looking for a deep red, almost brown, nutty color all the way on the outside. Now, like I was saying before, these steaks are dry aged, so this would have been further down the end, probably the first steak off the end, so it's drier. Once it's drier, it's going to caramelize quicker. So ice cold butter, a few cubes, and then to that, some rosemary, and I got some garlic cloves here. So these garlic cloves aren't peeled. Just gonna smash them.
If you leave the garlic skin on, it actually creates a little bit more of a barrier to prevent the garlic from burning. And you wanna do what Andy's doing. Smash the garlic, add it in whole with the garlic skin. All of this adds fragrance to the steak, adds more flavor.
So we're gonna baste these steaks in that foamy butter, and that's gonna really amplify the caramelization that we've got on the outside. Now I know someone's going to come in the comments and say, that's not caramelization. I know it's technically not caramelization, but that's what we refer to it as. At this point you really need to start making sure you check the temperatures, because they can go over really quickly. So this one here is about 34 degrees, and this one's a bit hotter. It's about 35 degrees. But this will all happen pretty quickly now.
Also, if you have a thicker steak, it is a good idea to remove it from direct heat and allow that temp to naturally come up to the temp that you want a few minutes before. So it does take a little bit of practice, but if you were to leave this until you reach, let's say 60 centigrade, yeah, and then you take it off, well, at the end, it may be over 65, 66 centigrade after you take it off the heat and let it rest.
Tray with a wire rack ready. That's ready to rest them. I think we're just about there. Now you probably noticed I've turned the flame off, and that's because this pan was getting too hot. All right, take them off. Let them rest. Now you can pour a bit extra of that butter over. We'll let those rest for a good 5 minutes, then we'll cut it open and see how I did. So there you go. Medium rare, no grey band on the outside. It's not running juices everywhere. Oh, and super tender.
This is one reason why I love to watch Andy. He is very clear with his instructions. He also has a nice test kitchen that he has everything at his disposal. It'd be nice to have that. Technique, Andy, I would say is like a 9 over 10, if not 10. Presentation, I mean, this was just a little test, so maybe not that high, maybe a 7 or maybe a 6 because he's just showing you how to cook steak. And chef vibes, 10.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Come on, man.
You already know who Gordon is, so I don't need to introduce him, but he is the most famous and most accomplished chef in the entire world. Now, does the king of TV cooking still have what it takes to make it on YouTube?
First off, a really nice smoked paprika. Brown sugar on top. Next to that, some thyme flowers. Dry thyme is great. And then some minced garlic.
Right now, Gordon is making a rub for his pork. If you have a gastro, it's a lot easier to do this because a plate like this, I mean, he is fine because he knows how to do it, but if you don't know how to do it, I'd recommend using a big gastro. That way you won't make a mess in the kitchen.
The secret here is to literally coat this pork butt in all those spices. Get a nice long roasting tray. Lightly oil it. From there, get your onions. Just peel them and slice them in half. Onions in. Now, that's what the pork butt sits on.
That roasting tray is the gastro. So if you mix it in there, it'll be a little easier to keep everything sorted.
Get that up to temp. And then lightly season those onions. So, fresh thyme in. Again, dry thyme is fine. What we're trying to do now is make this amazing sort of bed of this sweet caramelized onion that the pork sits on throughout the 8 to 10 hours.
Gordon is more classically trained in French cuisine, and you can tell this because he loves to use thyme, garlic. He loves to use a lot of these herbs, which are very common in French cuisine. It's not a short recipe.
Take your stock. This is the plain chicken stock, so you can use vegetable stock if you wish, and pour that over. Before it goes into the oven, a nice seasoning on top. Stock comes up to the boil, and then tin foil.
And this keeps all the moisture in because you don't want to be drying this pulled pork out.
And then from there into the oven at 250 for a minimum of 8 hours.
It's a lot of work to go through making pulled pork, so if you are going to be making it, I would suggest doubling or tripling the amount that you're going to make. And that way, if you do all the labor, all that work at once, you can freeze the rest of the meat and you can have pulled pork sandwiches whenever you want. It'll last for a few months in the freezer.
Lay them onto the board. And then from there,
Is he going to slice it?
literally get the knife doing the work. And look.
Now, you can do it like this, or I would also suggest that if you want to make pulled pork, you actually have to physically pull it apart. It's tedious, but it does work best if the pork is still hot. And you need to cook it to the point where the pork is literally starting to pull apart.
Now the secret from there, those onions, what we call a chef's dream. You take the onions and likewise, hold them together, turn them over, and literally slice. So you've got this caramelized onion puree. Slice the buns in half and just toast them lightly. This starts to sort of almost protect the bun. It stops it from going soggy. And look, that's all I want, a nice toasted bun.
It can help prevent the bun from becoming soggy, but you still don't want it to be too watery.
Chipotle, just dab that on the bottom. It's nice and moist. Now, just from there, take your slaw. Again, don't go crazy. Give it a good mix. Sit that on top. And now for the magic. The pork. Be generous and literally sit that on top of the slaw. You've got those onions. Smell how sweet they are, it's incredible. And then finally, take your chipotle and just sit that on top. That is a perfect
What's he gonna add?
race day treat.
Personally, I would add some coriander on top of this. It would go very nice.
And sit them on top and push that down a little bit so they don't fall out. They have to be the tastiest pork sliders anywhere on race day.
Overall, Gordon makes some delicious little pulled pork sliders. Well, they weren't really pulled, it was mostly sliced. So I do recommend actually pulling them because then the texture is just super delicious. Now, if we're gonna talk categories with Gordon, I'm a little biased since I have worked with Gordon's chefs in London and I know his type of cuisine because I grew up with it. My dad was also an English chef. Gordon's technique is 10 over 10. The presentation, I would say, is about 9 out of 10, maybe 8. I mean, it could be a lot nicer than this, but he still did an excellent job. Well, and chefy vibes, well, Gordon's Gordon. He is the chef of chefs. Next, we have Nick Deioani, Harvard-trained MasterChef finalist. He has a massive YouTube following. Like, if you guys haven't seen it, he has like 30 million followers. But does all that flash and polish mean that he's like cutting corners? Well, let's see.
Toasting off your spices. The first spice is cinnamon, which I'm going to break up into the pan. Then bay leaf, which I'll tear up as well. Notice how I'm starting with the larger spices first. Then star anise, which smells a little bit like licorice. A few cardamom pods. Then some mace. Before cooking biryani, I'd never seen the whole spice like this.
I have to admit, I haven't seen mace whole either as well. It's not very common to use, especially in like Western cuisines. I think it used to be though more in medieval times, mace. It's in a lot of older recipes.
Then some cloves, fennel seeds, then caraway seeds, which look a lot like fennel but a bit darker, some black peppercorns, black cardamom, which smells very strong and smoky, and coriander. Now we'll turn our heat to medium, medium-low, and then as we toast, it's a little bit less about what you see and more about what you smell.
Nick is giving good advice here. Although I do have to admit that with his shirt, I'm getting some Martha Stewart vibes. I don't know why. Basically, once you start to see the spices maybe pop a little bit, but the smell starts to intensify and they're starting to darken a little bit, this is the moment that you want to reduce the heat and take them off and let them cool down.
The other thing I like to look out for are those crackles that start to happen with the spices. Sometimes they'll even start to jump around in the pan a little bit, and that should tell you they're getting closer to being toasted off correctly.
Now start jumping, like little jumping beans.
Once your spices are fragrant and they look and sound and feel toasted.
And if you pay close attention, you can tell that they're starting to smoke a little bit. It's hard to see in the camera, but it is starting to smoke.
Describe it as almost like a warmly spiced, fresh baked pastry. It's sweet and woody with hints of licorice and citrus, but you also get all sorts of smokiness and even this flour-like smell.
I think I like Nick's new channel better. You don't have a lot of like childish comments and everything. He gets straight to the point with the recipes.
So what use is this Japanese eggplant to me anymore?
You make that joke every week, Joe. Is it purple or something? Why do eggplant always remind you of your pee?
Step number 2 is marinating our chicken, and for that, I'll start with some yogurt, then this ginger garlic paste, some of this Kashmiri chili powder, as well as some turmeric. What you're seeing here is one of my favorite parts about cooking Indian cuisine. It's so colorful. Then a few scoops of that biryani spice mix that we just made, a nice pinch of salt, and a few split open green chilies. If you split them like this, they'll give off tons of flavor, but be really easy to take out at the end. Mix this up until your chicken marinade is evenly combined. Unbelievable colors. You may be wondering, Nick, where'd you get such a cool shirt? The shirt came from one of my subscribers who lives in India and gave it to me as a gift when I was there.
How nice of Nick's subscriber. That was a nice gift.
Hit every corner of all that chicken. The better you mix it in, the better your biryani. Now we start layering. First with half of our crispy onions evenly around that chicken, then a nice sprinkle of that mint and cilantro. Make sure when you do this that everything is evenly spread out. The better you spread it, the more even that flavor will be. To finish the layering process, we'll go over the rice with some saffron milk. This I think might be my favorite part because it gives these beautiful yellow streaks. So now, despite how long we've just cooked this for, maybe the hardest part for me is always knowing where to take a nice scoop. I'm going to use this as my plate. And I'll scoop for some of that nice yogurt sauce that was on the bottom there. Oh, it's been all caramelized. The smell is this incredibly complex, irresistible smell. Makes you want to dive right in. As my first taste, oh my gosh, seasoned to perfection, but also fall apart tender.
What I love about Nick is that he does, for the most part, without the jokes, at least in these videos, he explains step by step on how to make something, which some YouTubers and chefs don't explain everything, and you need explanations with some steps. Overall, I have to say that Nick's technique with making this biryani is like an 8 or a 9. I mean, he did an excellent job. The presentation is about an 8 or a 9 as well. It looked beautiful. And chefy vibes, I can say that Nick over the years has gotten a lot better with his cooking skills, and we can see that in all of his recipes. So I'd give him more like a 6 or a 7. Now for Ethan, he is known to be a little nerdy. He is very scientific with all of his ingredients and his recipes. He has a very analytical approach to food. Now, Ethan is not a trained chef. He is an actual home cook. He measures everything, but does it actually taste good? Well, let's find out.
To start, get out 4 or 5 medium-sized russet potatoes and peel them. And this will be enough potatoes for about 6 100-gram hash browns, so you can use more or less depending on what you need.
Now, technically, I would say to peel the potatoes a little better because you don't want any dark spots and you don't want any spots that you missed, so any parts of skin, eyes, anything else.
Now, I'm using russet potatoes here on purpose as it is one of the highest starch content potatoes, which according to this chart from the Food Lab will give us crispy edges and a fluffy interior compared to different varieties. Once grated, many hash brown recipes will say you need to wash them in cold water. Now, I tried both washing and not washing and didn't find any real differences other than a slight discoloration due to oxidation, so I'm not bothering to do it because why add another step if it doesn't really add that much to the final product.
There are a lot of recipes that also say to do this with making like chips or french fries. I mean, it's one of those things. You don't have to do it when making hash browns, especially if it's a quick recipe, because he is right, it is an extra step, and if you don't want to do extra steps, is one to cut out.
So instead, lay out a clean towel and spread the grated potatoes all over it. Now pick up the 4 corners of the towel and twist it to form a sack of potatoes. Then twist and wring the towel as tight as you possibly can to squeeze out the excess water of the potatoes. And the reason we are doing this is that in order for the potatoes to get crisp, the water must be steamed off, so the less water we start with, the faster this will happen.
He's very technical about everything. I love it.
Next, open up the towel and lightly spread the potatoes around and just let them hang around for a minute or two. And meanwhile, we'll head over to the stove and set up a cast iron over medium-low heat and add about 2 inches of peanut oil.
If you're allergic to peanuts, pay attention.
And this is a moment where you should really be using a bigger pan so it's not overflowing the top. I thought I had much less potatoes than I did. Anyway, you want to bring the oil back to around 200 degrees Fahrenheit and set a timer for 6 minutes and let the potatoes cook while stirring occasionally. Set a timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, starting now.
Was that Alexa? I think that was Alexa in the background.
Par cooking process is critical for the hash browns as it softens and expands the starches on the exterior of the potato pieces, and these starches will recrystallize when we freeze them and provide a perfectly crispy exterior when we cook them again. Now you could do this same process with boiling water, however in my test the oil was far superior. The oil ones were much more crispy and a deep golden brown compared to the ones that I boiled in water, which were much less crisp and a lighter color.
Basically in oil you are frying, so if you do happen to use oil, it will give you a different texture than boiling them.
Once the timer is up, take the potatoes off the heat and set a metal strainer over a metal bowl. Pour the potatoes into the strainer, and we can set this oil aside to cool, and then we will strain it out through a paper towel again so we can reuse it. Never waste your oil.
I know he's doing this for the camera because of the way that his kitchen is more of a galley kitchen. I've lived in many places with galley kitchens, so I know the pain of having to do it, with a camera, but do it more in the sink.
You're going to sprinkle in a large pinch of salt into the potatoes, and I'm also going to add 8 grams of cornstarch, another critical ingredient that I found in my test. Mixing in the cornstarch roughens up the potatoes a bit and helps them stick together better than just oil. Flour also works well too, but I like the cornstarch for a lighter texture. And also, a little goes a long way. I'm only using about 8 grams or a tablespoon of cornstarch for this entire bowl.
Some recipes call for cornstarch, others call for egg. Egg is a good binder.
Once mixed, place a piece of parchment paper over a baking sheet, and to form these, I find it's best to add them to a small bowl or dish first and really squeeze them tightly together. I had issues with falling apart in some of my tests when I formed them by hand. Once the potatoes are squeezed into the dish, just flip it out and form it into that classic McDonald's style hash brown shape with your hands, and continue to do this for the rest of the hash browns. Now for specific measurements, mine ended up being roughly 4 inches high, 2.5 inches wide, and a ½ inch thick, and weighing in around 100 grams each.
Now if you're going to be making these at home, you don't need to get the ruler out and literally measure each and every one. I wouldn't suggest this. Not unless of course you want to be a little, analytical about it. You can do it, that's fine, it's perfectly fine. I mean, this is how you get like exact formulas on making some of the best recipes. This is how like McDonald's, Burger King, and all these big companies actually have such a consistency with their brand with all these menus.
Once all the hash browns are shaped, we're going to place them in the freezer for about 2 hours until completely frozen through.
This helps to firm them up, so when you go to fry them, they'll stick together a little better. Same thing with croquettes.
And now is the fun part, how do you cook them? So you can deep fry them, shallow fry them, or bake them, and they will all turn out great, but in general, I think deep frying yields the best result, shallow frying is the quickest, and then baking would be best if you were making a bunch at once. For each one, you want to cook them straight from the freezer. Don't worry about defrosting them. For deep frying, place about an inch of oil into a pot and heat it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, use a thermometer to ensure that the temperature is reached, and then slowly drop in the hash brown and agitate it slightly. You want to fry until it's golden brown all over, and in my test, this usually took around 5 to 6 minutes. Once they are golden brown, just transfer them to a wire rack over a baking sheet, and then after each of these preparation, I like to give them a little sprinkle of salt.
And it is good to also leave these on a wire rack to allow the excess oil to drain off.
All right, everybody, it is taste test time. Nice and crispy still. I'm sure you can hear that. It's wild how crispy these things stay.
Now, Ethan is very analytical, and I have seen many of his videos, although we've never reviewed one of his videos on my channel. Don't know why. I mean, he does a really good job. He really doesn't. We actually should review one of his videos. Now, Ethan with technique is a 10 because he is so technical. He tries everything he can to try to perfect everything he can perfect. Presentation wise as well, he did excellent. I mean, that hash brown looked exactly, or actually better than it does from McDonald's. And well, chefy vibes, Ethan is not a chef, but he is a very serious home cook, and he has a lot more skill than the majority of home cooks on YouTube. And finally, we have Joshua Wiseman. Big personality, bold flavors.
Did somebody say one pot meal? Oh my God. Somebody call the moms.
And sometimes controversial techniques. Is it style over substance, or is he secretly a genius? Well, let's see.
I think this might be one of my first chicken breast recipes that I've ever uploaded. I don't know how to feel about that, but you're gonna start with 4 or however many you want plump, skinless, boneless chicken breasts. Now, you see, one of the issues with frying meat is that it's always unevenly shaped. That means it's gonna cook at different degrees depending on how thick it is. And that is exactly why we're gonna put it between 2 sheets of plastic wrap. Apparently don't have a meat mallet. I thought I did, couldn't find it. So I used a pot, which works perfectly fine. Whatever you got, and just pound out that thicker part so that it's completely even in thickness from edge to edge until it's about 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters thick.
You can also butterfly the chicken if you're gonna be doing this, and Joshua's doing an excellent job. This is one of his old videos, by the way, and you can tell a massive difference between his old style of cooking and the new style, especially with the editing. I absolutely love Joshua's old videos. I love them. Also, another little tip, if you don't have a mallet, which I'm sure most of you may not have, don't use a hammer. Hammers are, the head is too small and it's not a good thing to use. But if you have a cast iron skillet, use that. Although be very careful if you're doing this on a breakable surface like marble or granite. Be very careful. You don't want to break your countertop.
By the way, this is not an optional step. If I read that somebody doesn't do this and it doesn't work out, well, there you go. Now, once you've pounded out all your chicken breasts, you're gonna get a breading station going. Fill 1 pie dish or rimmed container with 2 cups or 290 grams of all-purpose flour, another one with 3 eggs, plus 2 tablespoons or 30 milliliters of water, whisked together, obviously. And then the last one with 2 cups or 210 grams of panko breadcrumbs.
I would recommend to always add a little more panko than you would think that you need, because you always run out of panko. And if you don't like the size of panko as it's standard, I would recommend putting it in the blender just for a few blitz, just to get it to the size that you want. Because if you use panko at the size that it is, the pieces may be a little too big and they may not stick to the chicken as well as you want.
Quick little note about this stage. You don't really need measurements. It's just a matter of having enough to coat the chicken. It's not that complicated. This is one of those recipes that I think is perfect for people to learn proportions visually. Wow, really good advice. Thank you to myself for that one.
This is called paneing, where you're breading the chicken. So first the flour, then the eggs, then the panko. And I would recommend to keep one hand dry, one hand wet. So that way you don't end up with like a clump of batter on your hands.
Now, before we get started, you need to season your chicken breast. Now, you can go ahead and just season them with salt and go right into making this recipe. What I would recommend best is to season them with salt ahead of time and let them sit in the fridge overnight. Another way that I like to prepare these is I'll just rub them down with a light miso, no salt or anything, just a light miso, and let them sit in the fridge like that overnight.
I would also recommend seasoning the flour. You don't have to just add flour. You can add a little less flour, add the salt, add the pepper to that if you're gonna add pepper, and season that. You may end up having to waste a lot of salt because you need to have a good portion on that, but it's a little easier than doing all the steps individually.
First thing, take 1 chicken breast and toss it in the flour mixture just to coat both sides completely and evenly. Shake off the excess flour, then dredge it in the egg mixture. And quick note to keep your hands from being super messy is use 1 hand for wet and 1 hand for dry. Super simple, don't mix it.
I would also recommend using gloves. That way, instead of having to wash your hands every time that you need to touch the camera or do anything in the kitchen, It saves a lot of time.
You know, splash, splash. Make sure that there's no dry spots. And then drop your chicken breast in the panko and cover it in the panko and press to get it to adhere to the chicken breast. Do that to both sides. Make sure it's totally coated, and then place that on a small sheet of parchment paper. And then just rinse and repeat. Keep doing that with every chicken breast.
I would also recommend using another gastro to put the flour in. That way it's a little easier.
Now, if you want, you can actually bread these ahead of time and leave them in the fridge overnight if you want to cook them the next day, or you can do it the same day.
If you're going to pre-bread them, just be careful because the panko will get a little soggy. So if you freeze them, it will be a little better, but then depending on the size of the chicken, you know, with the frying.
Whatever. To that, you're gonna add 2 cups or 473 milliliters of high heat frying oil. Go ahead and heat that oil over moderately high heat. I would say like in between medium and medium high. To be honest, I usually don't temp check for recipes like this where I'm shallow frying. I just wait until I see the oil shimmering and it's nice and hot. But you know, if you want specificity, then it would be 325 to 350 Fahrenheit or 160 to 175 degrees Celsius. Next, just take a breaded chicken breast and drop it in that oil. Make sure to drop it facing away from you because if the oil splashes, you want it to splash away from you.
This is another good little tip, and if you don't learn this from somebody else and you do it by accident, it's a lot more painful. So trust me, learn from somebody, don't try it yourself, and don't hurt yourself. This goes for everything too. When you're laying anything in the pan with oil, always do it away from you. Never lay anything towards you.
Fry for 3 to 5 minutes or until crispy golden brown. If it's browning too quickly, turn the heat down. Then flip it over and fry it for an additional 3 to 5 minutes, or until an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit is reached. Place the done chicken breast on a wire rack set over a baking sheet and let it cool until it's not, you know, flaming hot. And then just repeat with all your pieces of chicken.
And then you need to season it with a little bit of seasoning salt.
It's cut all even and lined up and stuff. For the sandwich, I just use some of that slaw, some store-bought white bread because that's what they use for some reason, some of the sauce, some Kewpie mayo, top it, cut it nice and evenly, and, well, enjoy. So life is good because we got our crispy boys.
And Joshua, as I'm sure many of you know, is Joshua. Like I said, I really love his old videos. Like, I wish he would go back to making his videos like he used to. Now his videos are a little flashy. That's not even about the recipe, it's just about views. Now overall, on Joshua's technique, I would say a 9 out of 10. Joshua does an excellent job. He has worked in the real kitchen for quite some time, and he has developed a lot of good knife and cooking skills during his time in the kitchen. Presentation, maybe a 7. I mean, it's just tonkatsu is just like fried chicken. And chefy vibes. He acted more like a junior chef, and he was showing you on how to make things. Now guys, comes the scoring to see who is like the best, well at least for these videos, chef of all the YouTuber chefs on YouTube. Personally speaking, I'm a little biased. Gordon is the best. Obviously he is the chef, he knows what he's doing, and he can make anything. He may not be able to make everything perfectly, especially like pad thai.
What do you want to know from me? Ask me.
Well, how is it? Oh no, look at that face.
This is not pad thai at all.
Doesn't taste too bad. It's not perfect.
For you, but not for me.
But he definitely knows what he's doing. I would say Andy's number 2 on this list just because he has more time in the kitchen than the rest of everybody on the list, and he knows what he's doing. Andy is an excellent chef, and you can see this in all of his recipes. I would say the master finalist, Nick, is 3rd on the list. Nick does an excellent job, he really does. And he's still trying to give you really good recipes without a lot of fluff, which I like, because when I see a recipe, I don't like to see a lot of childish stuff. So with his new channel, his new look, he's done an excellent job with it. Although he did lose his uncle title, which I don't agree with. I think Uncle Roger was a little hard on him. But let me know down below if you think Nick deserves his uncle title back. I think he does. All right, now number 4 and number 5. I would have to say that Ethan is actually 4th on the list. Ethan doesn't have as much technique or skill, let's say, as Joshua, but he is very analytical about everything, and he hasn't really changed with his videos. Sorry, Joshua, you're last on the list. Personally speaking, I prefer Joshua's older videos and his recipes. Joshua's videos today have changed quite a bit. It doesn't mean that he's bad or anything, nothing. It just means that he's changed his style, which I'm not a favorite of. Let me know your thoughts down below though on who did the best in your ranking. My ranking is a little biased because again, I've worked with chefs with Ramsay, so I do prefer his style. Now, for all of you who are saying, well, why wasn't Jamie on the list? Well, after the butter chicken fiasco, the lasagna fiasco, the mac and cheese fiasco, and every other fiasco that we've seen, it's not that Jamie couldn't be on the list, it's just that I'd have to pick a good video. so it may take a little bit of time. But in any case, it's nothing personal. I still like Jamie. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Be sure to check out this next recipe here.